I never thought a birthday party could break my family apart. That night, I, Elena Morgan, 32 years old, an art teacher in Austin, came home after almost a year away. My mom had texted, saying she wanted the whole family together again. I even brought her favorite cake, thinking the evening would be warm and full of laughter like old times. But the moment the candles were blown out, my father stood up, his voice firm almost like he was announcing a verdict. This house will be transferred to Ryan. Your brother needs a place to start over. I froze. The fork slipped from my hand. Ryan, the brother who had run away and never sent a single letter, was now being handed the very house I had fought to save from the bank. The birthday party ended, and a family war began. I can still remember the smell of paint on my hands, the damp wood, the soft yellow light in this house 4 years ago, when it almost slipped away from us. Back then, my dad had just lost his job at the factory. My mom's health was fragile, and the dining table was covered with letters from the bank. When I came home for a weekend visit, I found a red notice stamped in bold letters. Notice of foreclosure. The house I grew up in, the one with the wall I scribbled on when I was 8, was about to be taken. I couldn't let that happen. At the time, I had just sold my painting Silent Garden, the one that won first prize at an international art contest in Seattle. The buyer paid $80,000, the biggest amount I had ever earned. I dreamed of using it to open a small art studio, to teach young students, and give others the chance to create. But when I saw my mother sitting quietly on the couch, her hands trembling as she held the debt notice, I knew I couldn't think about myself. I transferred the entire $80,000 to my father's account, no contract, no request for repayment. I only said, I won't let this house be taken away. It's where we were happy. My dad looked at me, silent for a long time, then nodded. In that moment, I thought he was proud of me. I thought he understood. But I was naive. After the debt was cleared, I stayed all summer to repaint every room, replace carpets, buy back old furniture, and fix up the garden. I even hired people to repair the porch and plumbing, things my dad always promised to do but never did. Mom used to say, Elena, you're just like your grandmother, always caring for others more than yourself. I smiled, thinking it was a compliment. For the next 3 years, I kept sending money every month to pay property taxes, electricity bills, small repairs. Meanwhile, Ryan, my brother, was gone. He'd followed friends to California to invest in a startup that went nowhere. Whenever I asked about him, Dad would just say, Ryan's finding his way. He's a man. It's normal to stumble sometimes. I never argued. I thought my parents were just being loving, and as the older sister, it was okay for me to shoulder a little more. But a little slowly became everything. Once, when I came home, Dad told me Ryan was borrowing my room, the small studio where I used to paint. My canvases had been moved to the garage, covered in dust. When I asked why, he said, Ryan needs space to get back on his feet. You're grown up now, don't be selfish. I stayed silent. I didn't want to argue in the very house I had saved. I told myself, as long as they're happy, it's okay. But I didn't realize that was just the beginning of the betrayal. The night after the birthday party, I sat alone in the living room. The house was still beautiful, the cream-colored walls I painted, the vintage sofa I picked, the light fixtures I installed myself. Everything carried my touch. And yet, my father could say so calmly, this house will belong to Ryan. I asked, what about me? What about the money I used to pay the debt, to fix everything? Does that mean nothing to you? He looked at me as if I'd just insulted him. Elena, you did it for family, didn't you? Then consider it your duty. Don't be calculating. Duty. That word cut deeper than anything else. So my love, my sacrifice, they were just obligations. Because I was the daughter? I turned to my mother, hoping she'd say something different, but she just held my hand and avoided my eyes. Sweetheart, Ryan's going through a hard time. He just got divorced. He's lost almost everything. This house will help him start over. You're strong, you can take care of yourself, can't you? That was when I finally understood my parents' love had conditions, and those conditions always favored their son. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked through the house, touching the walls I'd painted, the furniture I'd restored. Every corner seemed to whisper, this is yours, Elena. Yet with just a few words, they wanted to erase me from it. The next morning, I searched through Mom's old file cabinet, where she kept financial papers. I needed to know if this transfer was real or just a threat. Inside, I found bank statements, old bills, and most importantly, the mortgage payment receipts under my name. Each one said, "Payment received from Elena Morgan." My chest tightened. I remembered every transfer, every confirmation message, all proof that I was the one who had kept this home standing. The weight of betrayal pressed down on me until I could hardly breathe. I sat on the living room floor, clutching the papers with trembling hands. Part of me still wanted to believe my parents were just confused that they would come to their senses. But deep down, I knew something between us had broken. I was no longer the daughter who needed protecting. I was the one who had protected them, and they chose to turn away. As the morning light streamed through the window, reflecting off the painting I'd made years ago, I realized something. No one can erase your worth unless you let them. I folded the papers, slipped them into my bag, and took a deep breath. For the first time in years, I felt calm. I didn't know exactly what I'd do next, but I knew one thing for sure. I would not stay silent. This house might be a property to them, but to me, it was proof that sometimes kindness doesn't save people, it just makes you easier to betray. ChatGPT nói. I stayed for 2 more days after the birthday party, but the air in the house was heavy thick with everything left unsaid. Everyone acted as if nothing had happened, and I had to force myself to stay calm. Mom still made breakfast. Ryan sat at the table lazily, eating and half smiling as he said, "Don't be mad at Mom and Dad. They're just trying to help me get back on my feet." I looked at him and replied quietly, "Get back on your feet with the house I saved?" He smirked. "Come on, you're educated. Don't be petty about things like that. Mom and Dad have the right to decide. You don't even live here anymore." I stayed silent, though 100 thoughts burned in my mind. If I don't live here, then who's been using the money I send every month for the property taxes? Who bought the new sofa set? The living room lights? But I swallowed every word because in this house, any protest from me would be labeled ungrateful. That afternoon, I helped Mom hang laundry on the porch. I asked softly, "Mom, about the house. Are you really okay with it?" She paused, avoiding my eyes. "Elena, you have a stable job, your own life. Ryan's different. He just got divorced. He's got nothing left. You should understand him." I bit my lip. "But do you remember who kept this house from being taken away?" "Of course I do," she said. "But you helped because of love, not because you wanted ownership, right?" I gave a bitter laugh. Her tone was gentle, but every word cut deep. Love, that was the word they used to justify taking what I'd built. Then she added, trying to end the conversation, "Don't think too negatively. You helped your family, that's what daughters are supposed to do. One day when we're gone, this house will still be yours and Ryan's. It'll always belong to all of us." But I knew those were just soothing words. Once the papers were signed, ours would become his. That evening, Dad came home and saw me sitting in the kitchen. "Still upset about the house?" he asked. "I'm not upset," I said quietly. "I just think it's unfair." He sighed and sat across from me. "Elena, you're a woman. One day you'll have your own family. The house should go to Ryan, he's the one who carries on the family line. Your mom and I are just trying to protect his reputation." He looked straight at him. "Ryan's reputation matters more than my fairness?" He was silent for a long time, then said, "You're not a parent yet. You don't understand. Blood is blood, but sons must be prioritized. That's nature." Nature. The word nearly took my breath away. In this century, my own father still believed a woman's worth was less simply because she was a woman. I stood up without another word. Part of me wanted to scream, to tell him about the nights I'd stayed up painting commissions, about how I'd given up my dream studio so they could keep their home. But the other part of me just felt empty. Sometimes the deepest wounds don't come from enemies, but from the ones we love. That night, I walked into the backyard. The streetlight shone through the bougainvillea vines I'd planted myself. The petals swayed gently in the wind, just like when I was little, sitting there with Ryan and my parents, laughing, when life was still simple. I used to think family was the one place where love was unconditional. But now, I knew the condition clearly. You have to be a son and worthy of help. My phone buzzed a text from Ryan. "Don't make this a big deal. Mom and Dad already decided. I promise once I have money, I'll fix up the house and make it nicer to make you happy." I stared at the screen, but didn't reply. They really thought money could replace fairness, that empty promises could mend a broken trust. I walked through the house one last time. In every room, I saw pieces of myself, the young woman who scrubbed paint stains, smiled when the lights turned on, felt proud for saving her home. Now that woman was just a guest, a stranger in the very place she rebuilt. The next morning, I packed my things. Mom came to the door, hugged me, and whispered, "Don't be angry with us, Elena. One day you'll understand." I smiled faintly. Maybe. But if I ever do, I won't be the same person anymore. I drove away, watching the house disappear in the rearview mirror. For the first time in my life, I didn't feel regret, only coldness, the kind that comes when everything you once called home has been hollowed out, leaving nothing but an empty shell called family. I left the house, but I still felt unsettled. Something felt wrong, and it haunted me for days. My father said the house would be transferred, but that can't be that easy. By law, everyone with a financial interest must sign. I paid the whole mortgage. My name is on the payment records. Could they really do this without me? A week later, I went back to Austin, saying I was visiting Mom. Actually, I just wanted to check the paperwork. One morning while Mom was at the market, I quietly went into my father's office. He always kept important papers in the old wooden cabinet, the third drawer from the bottom, where I had seen his old loan contracts before. I opened the drawer. Inside was a thick stack of files tied with string. On top was a transfer of ownership contract, the title in big letters, Transfer of Ownership Agreement. I opened it and read every page. Then, my heart stopped. The signature at the end, my name, Elena Morgan, written in a thin, slanted hand. It looked like, but it wasn't mine. I have signed hundreds of papers in my life. I know my handwriting. My E is always rounded. This E was long and firm, like my father's. I flipped through more pages. My father's, my mother's, and Ryan's signatures were there too. The bank's confirmation said, "All parties have agreed to transfer ownership of property number A254. My hands trembled. So they didn't just take the house, they forged my name. I photographed all the documents with my phone and put them back exactly as I found them. That whole day, I barely spoke to Mom. I stared at her, trying to see if she knew. Her eyes avoided mine, like she had something to hide. At night, I sat in the car outside the gate and called Clara, my college friend who's now a civil property lawyer. "Clara, if someone forges my signature to transfer a house, can I sue?" I asked, voice shaking. She was quiet for a moment, then said, "Elena, if the signature is forged and the property has value, that's identity fraud and financial fraud. Do you have proof? I have photos of the contract, and I know that signature isn't mine. Keep the original where it is. Don't touch anything. I'll arrange for a bank specialist to verify." The next day, Clara and I went to the bank branch that handled my father's old loan. David, the banker, looked at the photo of the contract and frowned. "This signature doesn't match the signature we have on file for you. Who submitted this?" I told him slowly, "Maybe my father. He has access to the original files because his name is on the title." David sighed. "This is serious. The form was certified by an old staff member who's no longer here. Do you want me to pull the original scan?" I nodded. A few minutes later, the screen showed the contract, the forged signature. Identical. I felt cold and sick. My father actually signed for me. Leaving the bank, Clara put her hand on my shoulder. "Elena, I know this hurts, but if they did this, it's illegal. You have the right to protect yourself." I looked at the streetcars in line, sunlight reflecting off windows. For a moment, all the old family images, Dad carrying me to school, Mom cooking, Ryan joking flashed like a faded film. Then they vanished. That night, I drove back to my small apartment in downtown Austin. I saved all the photos and wrote everything in a digital journal. Dates, times, words. I realized I couldn't rely on memory anymore. Only evidence would protect me. I didn't sleep the whole night. A sentence kept looping in my head. My family wouldn't do this to me, would they? But the evidence said otherwise. Early the next morning, I got a message from Mom. "Don't make this a big deal. Dad only signed because he thought you would agree." My hand tightened until it hurt. This wasn't a small thing. They had turned my trust into a tool for fraud. I looked at the photos again. Forged contract, fake signature, bank confirmation, my mother's indirect admission. Everything was clear. For the first time in my life, I understood. If I don't stand up, they will keep treating my silence as consent. I called Clara. My voice was calm but very firm. Start it. I want to do everything by the book. If they choose to lie, I will choose justice. On the other end, she said, okay. They'll learn that Elena Morgan won't be silent anymore. I put down the phone and leaned back. Morning light shone through my window, and across my face, quiet but determined. From this moment, the real fight had begun. I knew I couldn't rush into a fight without a plan. Right after my call with Clara, we started making a legal strategy cold, careful, and based on proof. First, Clara told me to protect the evidence. She said, don't let them erase or change anything. Take photos, scans, recordings, and keep a diary. Everything can help. I did exactly that. I photographed the contract, bank statements, receipts for the furniture, messages and emails that confirmed my transfers, and before and after photos of the house when I fixed it. I searched my email for every payment receipt. Every cent I sent them had a record with date, time, and transaction ID. Next, Clara introduced me to a handwriting expert and a private investigator she had used before. The handwriting expert asked for original or high-resolution scans of my real signatures from the bank, art contracts, and other papers. He compared every small detail: curves, pen pressure, spacing, and confirmed. The signature on the transfer contract did not match my real signature. He wrote a professional report that could be used in court. The private investigator began gathering more proof, finding the exact time the contract was signed, who filed the paperwork at the bank, checking security cameras near the house, the corner grocery store, to see who came and went that day with documents, and tracing which bank employee handled the file. In a few days, he gave us the entry logs for an old bank staff member, the person who processed and archived files, who left the job right after the transfer. Clara also told me to file a criminal complaint for forged signature and identity fraud at the police station. I walked into the public office, hands shaking, and put a folder on the counter with the contract scans, the handwriting expert's preliminary report, and the list of my transfers proving I paid the mortgage. The officer took the file, gave me a receipt, and set a meeting. They said they would open a criminal investigation if there were enough signs of a crime, and a criminal case would strengthen my civil claim. At the same time, Clara filed an emergency civil request with the court to freeze any transactions related to the house to stop any name changes, sales, or withdrawals. This step was crucial. If they really forged the papers, they might try to move or hide the property. A temporary court order would cut off their escape routes. While collecting proof, I also found witnesses. Diane, the kind neighbor, agreed to write that she saw me fixing the house and heard my mother praise my work. Henry, the neighborhood maintenance man, gave receipts for the materials I bought for the roof and pipes. I turned all these statements into sworn, notarized declarations. Amid these cold legal moves, my feelings were a mess, sometimes numb and frozen, sometimes stretched tight like a wire, imagining facing my parents in court. But every piece of evidence felt like a shard of glass fitting into a whole picture of the truth, and each piece gave me strength. One day, Clara called. The court accepted the emergency filing. They'll meet in a few days to decide about a temporary freeze. My heart beat fast, not from fear, but a strange excitement. For the first time in years, I was turning pain into action. I know the road ahead will be long. A criminal probe, a civil trial, cross-examinations, expert reports, maybe a settlement or a hard court decision. But one thing is clear: I won't be silent. I've gathered proof, found legal help and witnesses, and taken the first steps to reclaim what's right. That night, I opened my file one last time and looked at every paper. I felt cold, steady, and determined. If justice is on the side of truth, I will not let go. The day of the trial arrived. I sat in the waiting room, gripping my file so tightly that my knuckles turned white. Clara sat beside me, calm but determined. Elena, breathe, she whispered. Today isn't the end. It's the day you take your voice back. I nodded, swallowing the lump rising in my throat. The courtroom felt cold, the white lights harsh and distant. When I saw my father and Ryan walk in, My heart raced not from fear, but from disbelief that the people I once trusted were now my opponents. My mother sat quietly in the audience, eyes red and tired. She couldn't look at me. The invisible wall between us felt heavier than ever. The judge entered. 3 knocks of the gavel, silence. The opposing lawyer began first, painting everything as a family misunderstanding. He claimed my father merely acted on my behalf, assuming I would agree. He spoke of love, miscommunication, and family bonds, twisting every truth into something that sounded gentle, almost noble. I stayed silent, biting my lip, forcing myself not to break when they turned betrayal into affection. Then Clara stood. Her voice was steady, sharp, and clear. Your Honor, this is not a misunderstanding. This is forgery, identity misuse, and theft of lawful property. She presented our evidence, the handwriting analysis, the bank statements proving I paid off the mortgage, the witness statements. One by one, each piece appeared on the screen, filling the courtroom with a heavy silence. The handwriting expert took the stand, explaining every curve and stroke, showing the unmistakable differences between the real and forged signatures. His tone was clinical, precise, stripping away every layer of their lie. Then, the former bank employee testified that the people who submitted the file that day were not me but my father and Ryan. The room erupted in murmurs. When it was my turn to speak, my legs trembled, but my voice didn't. I'm not here to punish anyone, I said quietly. I just want back what I spent years working to protect. I can't accept that my efforts are erased. Because I'm a daughter, because people believe daughters don't own. They belong. I'm the one who paid for that house. I deserve respect. My father lowered his head. Ryan avoided my eyes. My mother sobbed softly, but I couldn't let pity blur the truth. I had been silent too long, and that silence had become their permission to cross every line. After nearly 3 hours of debate, the judge gave the verdict. Based on the presented evidence and testimonies, the court confirms acts of forgery and unlawful use of identity. The transfer agreement is hereby voided. Mr. Morgan and Ryan Morgan are ordered to return ownership of the property to the plaintiff. Furthermore, the case will be referred to criminal investigation authorities. 3 strikes of the gavel echoed through the room. My tears fell not from revenge, but from relief. After months of fear and doubt, I could finally breathe again. I had done it. I had stood up for myself. As I stepped out of the courtroom, my mother rushed to me, clutching my hand. Elena, I'm sorry. I never thought it would go this far, she cried. I looked at her and said softly, Mom, sometimes silence is part of the wrongdoing. Then I walked away, leaving behind tears that I wasn't sure belonged to me, to them, or to a family that had lost the most precious thing of all, trust. That day, I didn't just win a lawsuit. I won back my dignity, my faith in justice, and most importantly, myself. I moved into a small apartment by Lady Bird Lake, where every morning sunlight streamed through the window and reflected off the unfinished canvas on my easel. The place wasn't big, but it was quiet, and most importantly, it was mine. No more shouting matches, no more judging eyes, no more feeling like I had to endure for the sake of family. Just me, the smell of oil paint, and the soft steam from my morning coffee. At first, I would still wake up in the middle of the night, startled by what I thought was my father calling from downstairs. Then I realized what I needed to learn wasn't how to forget, but how to accept that some wounds don't need to be erased. They just need to stop controlling you. I used to fear losing my family, but now I understand. If a family only survives through silence and one-sided sacrifice, then maybe what I lost was never truly family. One afternoon, while teaching a painting class for kids, a little girl asked me, Miss, are you ever scared that your family might make you sad? I smiled and said, everyone gets scared, but what matters is, when they hurt you, you still have the courage to speak up. That's what being brave means. That answer wasn't just for her, it was also a reminder for myself. After the trial, local newspapers briefly mentioned the identity fraud case within my family. Some people criticized me for airing dirty laundry, while others called me a woman brave enough to stand up for herself. I didn't care anymore. I learned that truth doesn't need applause. It only needs you to be calm enough to face it. A month later, I held an art exhibition called The House I Saved. It showcased both old and new paintings, telling the story of my journey from the old house to the courtroom to the apartment I now call home. Each painting carried a memory, both painful and beautiful. To my surprise, many people came not for the scandal, but because they saw themselves in my story. Children once hurt by their own family, yet still choosing forgiveness to move forward. At the end of the event, I stood before the audience and said, "Justice doesn't only live in a courtroom's verdict. It lives in the moment you decide not to let others define your worth." I once believed staying silent was how to keep a family together, but now I know sometimes speaking out is how you save it. Later, I hung a small painting in my living room. Against a soft gray background stood a girl facing a collapsing house, but behind her was a brilliant sunrise. Beneath it, I wrote, "I lost a home but found myself." That night, I reopened my old journal and wrote the final lines of my story. I no longer seek anyone's approval. All I need is peace and a life that's honest to myself. Then I posted a video sharing my story online, not to seek pity, but to remind people that justice often begins with one person brave enough to say, "Enough." I don't need praise. I just hope those still silent in the dark realize they're not alone. If you were in my place, discovering your family forged your signature to steal from you, would you choose forgiveness or bring the truth to light? And tell me, what truly keeps a family together, blood or honesty and respect?